everybody, my name is Mathis, and I was recently given the opportunity to check out a preview build for an upcoming game I've been very excited about by Slowclap Studios, and that's Sifu. If Slowclap sounds familiar, it's because they released a relatively successful game a few years ago in Absolver. Now, I really loved Absolver. I think its combat system and its martial arts mechanics were some of the greatest and maybe even the most innovative in that genre in a long, long time. However, Absolver really didn't have a lot of content, and while the end of the game hinted toward more to come, we didn't really get much else. And that's clear now because Slowclap decided to move on to Sifu instead of pursuing more Absolver content.
None of your business.
Guy.
Now, how you feel about that, or whether you even played Absolver or not, I'll leave squarely in your hands. I know I really enjoyed Absolver for what it was, and did at the end of the day wish there was more to do. And getting an early build of Sifu that's 2 months before the game is supposed to hit to be able to check out what exactly Slowclap has been up to over these past few years was really exciting for me. Now, before I get into my impressions of this game, I just want to clarify a few things beforehand. First, that the build that I ended up getting is only the first half of the second chapter. It skips the opener, the tutorial, the entire first chapter. On top of that, a lot of the progression hasn't really been tweaked all that much yet. I'm getting a lot more experience, I think, and I'm a little bit more powerful than I would be at this particular point in the game. But a lot of that is so that I get a really good idea as how the combat is going to work in Sifu, because the combat in this build is representative of the final game experience that we're going to be getting soon. I'm also told that there is a photo mode that'll be made available when the game releases, but it's not in this build, and I'm not all that worried about it. With all that said, I'm kind of just going to give you my flat impressions of Sifu, what I thought about it, what it did for me that I liked, what it did that it didn't, and let you watch me play through. I ended up playing through this little preview segment like 10 or 11 times over to give you an idea of maybe how I'm feeling about the game, and I recorded 3 of them for Dean, so he has plenty of footage to use here. So, I would love to tell you what the story of Sifu is. I have no idea off the top of my head. I don't know if it's really out there anywhere, other than the fact that you start as a young 20-something-year-old on a quest for what I assume is revenge of some sort for a fallen family member or something along those lines. And from level to level, it seems like you're going to be going through, looking to fight the boss of the level, kind of knocking them out of your list and moving on to the next one. It's a pretty simple setup that really does echo and pay homage to all those martial arts movies we all grew up with in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and more. It's that setup for you to feel like a nothing at the very beginning and build your legend and your skill as you play through the game. For the first half of the second chapter, the idea is that we're going into this club looking for somebody by the name of Sean. And as we're moving through the level, you're going to have little opportunities to have these vocal interactions with these NPCs. There's kind of like your stoic response, your violent response, or your kind of peaceful response. But right out the gate, at least in this preview chapter, it doesn't seem like how you respond to NPCs really all that matters all that much. You might get a different line of dialogue, but it always seemed to lead exactly to what the game is trying to get at: the next fight. Now, you could skip dialogue with some of them and start fighting them right away, but we can talk about that in a little bit. Because it doesn't take long for this game to get right into the action. As you're walking up to the club, a few little NPCs tell you no one's gonna let you in, and the bodyguard at the front tries not to let you in, and then you have to fight them. And it's instant that you can see, especially if you ended up playing Absolver, that the combat system is taken right from Absolver, tweaked just a little bit, and made for a brand new game. And I have to tell you, as a fighting game fan, as an action-adventure game fan, the combat in this system is extremely satisfying. Like most action-adventure games, you have your light attack and your heavy attack, a block that if you hit just in the right amount of time is a parry, and a dodge button, as well as an option to use weapons and throw weapons. And at the very beginning, you being a spry 20-something-year-old, you don't really have a ton of combos at your disposal. But as you start defeating enemies, really starting to learn and master the system, you're going to gain experience points. And with those experience points, between deaths, you can spend them on new skills. And that's where the unique twist of Sifu comes into play. The twist is you carrying a magical amulet on you. And every time you die, you can choose to resurrect again. And when you resurrect, you gain an age. At the beginning, it's just 1 or 2 years to start, but the further along you get, the faster the years start passing you by. The first few deaths, for instance, you're gonna go from 20 to 23, 24, 25. Then they're gonna start skipping 2 years. And by the time you're in your 30s and 40s, every time you die, it's about a 5-year skip. And your character, their physical appearance matches that change. But it's more than just an aesthetic change as well. Every time you come back, you'll have less max HP, but you'll do more damage, ideally, assuming representing the idea of more skill as you age, but a frailer body. And of course, every time you die and the more you play, the better and better you're getting at this game. It's really tempting to want to go in, especially as the game continues, to start button mashing, to just start throwing out attacks and heavy attacks. It almost has a Batman Arkham feel where you can bounce back and forth between enemies, especially if they start blocking. But the game is going to very quickly punish you for this. This is not a game built around kind of just swinging wildly. You want to kind of watch your opponents, read how they move, and react accordingly. The first time I played, by the time I was done beating it, I was about 45 years old in game. And at this point, if I am anywhere older than 25, I am surprised because I've put that much time into it. And I would say that much time is like a couple of hours. And through those couple of hours, I've really learned a lot about the game and have gotten better with it. And so you have this kind of mix between the game helping you get better, as every time you die, you gain a little bit of damage, even if you lose a little bit of health. But in replacement of that, you are also gaining the skill of playing more and learning its mechanics. And for lack of a better word, learning this kind of light fighting game that's more you versus a computer than you versus another player, like Absolver wanted to be. Now, it became very clear that this game is likely going to be going into a room, fighting a bunch of enemies, moving down the hallway into the next room and fighting a bunch of enemies. It was a very guided experience. There were a couple of doors that were locked that seemed like there might be something to explore down those areas. And one of them I learned that as long as I immediately replayed the demo, we'll call it, as soon as I beat it, I could actually get through, because at some point during this level you get a key card and you can use that key card to explore an earlier door. I couldn't actually go backward in the level, but playing it again, I found out that I could go through at least one of those doors. It didn't end up being anything other than some extra fights and a unique piece of dialogue. There wasn't any gear or any experience or totem or anything along those lines. But it was neat to at least see that. But I would hope, or at least I am slightly hoping, that when we get the final product and we finally get the whole game, we'll actually have a little bit more to explore and to check out for ourselves, because the world itself and its models are beautiful. The inside of the club was this gorgeous neon coloring, and there was just a really cool vibe throughout the whole thing. It really felt like this kind of underground club that wasn't so much a club as it was a place for a bunch of martial artists to get together and beat the hell out of each other. Which brings me to my worry, I guess, is that I am worried that this game is going to be short. Absolver was very short. It was a really fun, compact package, but for the price that they were asking at the time and for the content that was available, it didn't feel like a full game. It felt like the first chapter to a much larger game that we never got. And if this is the first half of chapter 2, it took me about 15 minutes, we'll say, on my very first playthrough to get through it, all deaths included. At this point, I can get through it in about 10, since I'm a little bit better with the mechanics, even if I'm not perfect for it yet. I don't know how many chapters it's going to be, but my assumption is somewhere around 5 or 6, just by in-game hints and the home base that you start at, where you have this billboard where you're kind of like conspiracy style tracing all the people you're looking to get to. Now, they did pitch to me that this is going to be kind of roguelite-ish, because at the end of the day, if your character gets too old, his amulet will break and you will have to start the whole thing over again. Now, what I think that means is right back at chapter 1. You've got this run through of the 5 chapters and you're trying to do it all in one quote unquote life, which brings into question the difficulty of the game. I don't know how difficult this game is going to be because, to their own admission, this preview build was built with more accessible and powerful character in mind. But even with that, it didn't seem like the upgrades were going to change the gameplay all that much. They just kind of give you more combos to play with, but you can seemingly get through everything with your base heavy and light attacks without all those extra upgrades anyway. So I do wonder where the difficulty is going to lie. Are they expecting us to die over and over again, and this is going to be like a 20-hour experience or a 10-hour experience simply because we just die a lot until we progress to the point where we're too powerful for the game to really beat us? Or is this going to be one of those games where skill will literally get you through your first or second attempt, as long as you at least have a comprehension to how these mechanics are going to work, and that death may not be as common as they want it to be? I don't know. I don't know. All I can tell you is at the end of the day, the combat system is deep and rewarding. The action sequences are all extremely satisfying. Taking out enemies seems extremely fun. All enemies have a health bar and a stamina bar, and if you break their stamina bar, you can perform a finisher, and by doing that finisher, you gain a little health back. It's the only way you can gain health back as you play. There are no health packs lying around or anything, so it does require skill for you to actually push forward. But that loops back to my other question of, is that all you'll need? Again, I played through this demo like over 10 times, and I fully plan on playing through it a few more times, if it gives you any idea of how much I'm enjoying it. And it says something if my big genuine concern is that will there be enough of the game for me to enjoy? Because I love what's here. At the end of the day, the combat, the graphics, the sense of empowerment, the soundtrack, all of it is really good, and it's right out of Absolver in many, many ways. So if you liked Absolver or enjoyed their combat system, keep your eye on Sifu. I think this is going to be a really special game when it eventually comes out.